So let's continue with part 2 on strategic analysis. So this time we will be talking about the internal and external environments. In the previous video, we were talking about strategic goals as part of our strategic analysis. So that is your vision, your mission, and then your strategic objectives. This time around, we will be talking about internal and external environments of your company. Okay, as part of your strategic analysis. So we will be utilizing the SWOT analysis. I know you've heard about this, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. Okay, we will be using it as our analysis for the internal and external environment. So when we're talking about the internal environment of the firm, which is the environment within the firm, okay, within the company, it actually refers to your strengths and your weaknesses. We will analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of the company when we are talking about internal environment analysis. On the other hand, when we are talking about external environment analysis, which is actually the environment outside the company, okay, which includes your competitors, the outside factors like your economy or the technological development or everything that is happening outside the company. Okay, we will be utilizing we will be analyzing the available opportunities and the threats of that company in its industry, okay, in its environment, in its external environment. So in short, when we analyze the internal and external environments of a company, we will utilize the SWOT analysis, okay, in our strategic analysis. So in order for us to know what the opportunities and threats are in our company, we have to look into the external environment of our company in which it is situated. So this is the environment outside the company. So the external environment analysis is actually a method for us to look into the factors which affect the external environment, okay? What is going on outside the company, so that whatever data we have gathered, we will be using it, and we will be able to use it in order for us to create our opportunities and threats, because that is the actual goal of the external environment analysis, to identify the opportunities and threats of our company. So when we talk about external environment, there are actually two types. You have the general environment and then the competitive environment. Okay, so the general environment are factors which are external to an industry. Take note, class, external to an industry. So for example, your company is Jollibee, okay? It belongs to the food industry. When you examine the general environment of Jollibee, you examine the factors which are external to the food industry, which is outside the food industry. Why? If it is inside the food industry, if you're examining the food industry itself, okay, you're actually examining the competitive environment. Okay. So when we talk of factors external to an industry which the company belongs, it's the general environment. And the general environment is usually beyond the firm's control. Okay, so there are 6 major areas. One, you have demographic. What is demographics? Demographics is the genetic and observable characteristics of a population, including the levels and growth of age, density, sex, race, ethnicity, education, geographic region, and income. Okay, this is data regarding the population of the people in the environment which your company is situated. Socio-cultural, these are values, beliefs, and lifestyles of a society. Okay, a good example of this is, for example, the Holy Week. Okay, in the Philippines, uh, most people practice the Holy Week. Okay, so major food industries, fast food industries, consider the opportunity that during the months of March or April, a lot of people would eat fish, okay, in the Philippines. So that's why they would have your fish fillet. Okay, there will be promotions for fish fillet during the months of March or April for the Holy Week. Okay, political or legal. Okay, this refers to how a society creates and exercises power, including rules, laws, and taxation policies. For example, during sometime in 2019 when the train law was passed, train law, that's the amendment to our tax code, to our National Internal Revenue Code, and under the train law, they have high percentage taxes, increased percentage, there is an increase in the percentage tax for uh, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. So it's a law, okay? The train is a law, train law, which carried with it a higher taxation for high fructose corn syrup. So what happened there? There is a threat for for example, Coca-Cola or industries which use high fructose corn syrup. That's why they have identified that threat and then they use different alternatives. So hindi na sila gumagamit ng high fructose corn syrup kasi mahal na because it the taxes for high fructose corn syrup has increased. Kaya ngayon yung mga sodas natin, yung mga Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or mga soft drinks natin, hindi na masyadong matamis, if you will notice. Okay, because they have identified that threat because of a law. The technological area refers to the innovation and state of knowledge in industrial arts, engineering, applied science, and pure science and their interaction with society. So, for example, during COVID-19, during the pandemic, okay, there is an opportunity for technological companies to sell laptops and iPads because the medium of instruction is through the internet. Online classes are being held. So there is an opportunity in the technological area during COVID-19. Economic. These are characteristics of the economy, including national income and monetary conditions. In the Philippines, we are known to be the Philippines is known to be a poor country. We are in poverty. So there is an opportunity for lending companies to invest here in the Philippines. So that because people will borrow money, okay, to cope up with their day-to-day expenses. So there is an opportunity for lending companies here in the Philippines. And lastly, global. Okay, these are influences from foreign countries, including the foreign market, opportunities, foreign-based competition, and expanded capital markets. So the second type of external environment is what we call the competitive environment. So as I have mentioned before, when we are talking about the general environment, these are factors that pertain or factors which can be found outside the industry itself. On the other hand, when we're talking about factors within the industry itself, that's the competitive environment. For example, Jollibee, again, okay? Jollibee belongs to the food industry. And what are other companies belonging to the food industry? For example, McDonald's or KFC, okay? So if your company is Jollibee, if you're trying to examine the general environment, you look at factors outside the food industry. Okay, that's your general environment. On the other hand, when you want to examine the competitive environment, you want to examine factors within the food industry. Okay, you want to examine your competitors. That's why you call it the competitive environment. Your competitors within the food industry. You're trying to look at the factors in McDo, okay, in KFC, okay, or whatever factors there may be within that particular industry that your company is situated. So when we're talking about the competitive environment, okay, we will utilize the Porter's 5 forces model of industry competition. We will use this tool as our analysis to examine the competitive environment of your company. So what is Porter's 5 forces model of industry competition? It's actually a tool, okay, for examining the industry level competitive environment, especially the ability of firms in that industry to set prices and minimize costs. It also provides the rationale for increasing or decreasing resource commitments. This model helps you assess how to improve your firm's competitive position with regard to each of the 5 forces. Okay, so again, we will use this model, Porter's 5 forces model of industry competition. We will use it as a tool to analyze the competitive environment in which your company is situated. Again, class, this is a tool for examining the competitive environment. Okay. In order for us to ultimately identify, again, the opportunities and threats in the external environment of our firm. So, Porter's 5 forces model of industry competition. Teka, sino ba to si Porter? Okay. This is Michael Eugene Porter, okay, a world-renowned economist, strategist, okay. Most books, most authors follow Porter's 5 forces model of industry competition, and I tell you, most companies, major companies, apply this, okay, in examining the competitive environment of their company. Okay, so according to Porter, there are 5 forces which you will have to examine and analyze in order for you to come up with the possible threats within your industry. Okay, so one of the force is what we call the threat of new entrants. What is this threat? The threat of new entrants refers to the possibility that the profits of established firms in the industry may be eroded by new competitors. Okay, the threat of new entrants meaning the threat of new companies entering your industry. Okay, why is there a threat? Okay, what are the possible threats there? The possible threat would be mabababa yung profits nyo because there will be new competitors that will enter your market, your industry. Okay, the second threat, the second force in the Porter's 5 forces model is what we call the threat of substitute products or services. Okay, this refers to the threat of limiting the potential returns of an industry by placing a ceiling on the prices that firms in that industry can profitably charge without losing too many. Okay, what does that mean? Ang haba-haba naman, sir. Okay, it simply means, like for example, Jollibee again. Okay, so it's a fast food industry belonging to the food industry. Okay, its major competitors again, KFC, McDonald's. Okay, when we are talking about a threat of substitute products or services for the company Jollibee, we're talking about the threat that instead of buying of, customers instead of buying from fast food chains, okay, they would tend to buy from carinderias, the local carinderias. Okay, that's the threat of substitute products or services. They will not buy from other fast food chains, but the substitute, okay, which is the carinderia. It can satisfy their hunger. The same with fast food industries. Okay, but at a cheaper price. Okay. The third force is the bargaining power of buyers. Okay. The bargaining power of buyers refers to the threat that the buyers may force down prices, bargain for higher quality or more services, and play competitors against each other. because if you are selling things, okay, buyers have the tendency to haggle the prices, okay, depending on your industry. Kung marami kayong competitors, okay, if there are a lot of businesses or companies within your industry, buyers can tend to purchase from other companies, okay, or haggle your prices, okay, or kung meron kayong maling nagawa, okay, or you have practices that irritate buyers can ultimately tend to boycott, okay. Hindi na sila bibili sa inyo, sa iba na bibili, okay. That's the threat or the force referred to here, the bargaining power of buyers, or they may demand higher quality products from you, okay. The fourth force is the bargaining power of suppliers, okay. For bargaining power of buyers, we are referring to your customers. Bargaining power of suppliers, on the other hand, we are referring to your suppliers, okay, the people or the companies from which you purchase your raw materials from, okay. If you are into buying and selling, okay, these are the people that you purchase your supplies or your products from, okay. So what is the threat here? There is that possibility that the suppliers may raise prices, okay, or even reduce the quality of purchased goods, okay. They have the tendency to increase their price, okay, which will in turn increase your costs, or there may be that possibility that they will give you poor quality products, okay. That's the force that we are referring to here. The last force, the fifth force, is the intensity among the existing firms. I mean, the intensity of the rivalry, okay. Kung gaano ka-intense yung rivalry ng mga existing firms within your industry, okay. The threat that customers will switch their business to competitors within that industry. Like for example now, okay, uso yung Food Panda. Again, our example still is Jollibee, ha. Uso yung Food Panda. You know, Jollibee has their own delivery services, di ba? If you will know, 8700 Jollibee delivery. Okay, they have their own delivery services for their products, okay. But now during the pandemic, umuso yung Food Panda, okay. The rivalry became more intense for Jollibee, okay. There are a lot of options that buyers can choose from when we are talking about food products in the food industry. So what Jollibee did, nag-Food Panda na lang din sila, okay. Although it will cost them because they will be paying Food Panda for their services, but they have to join the rivalry, otherwise they will lose profits, okay. So all these forces you have to analyze, and by the way, how do you do this? You list them down, okay. You identify and then you list them down, okay, for us to again ultimately identify the opportunities and threats available in our industry, in our competitive environment, okay, so that we can come up with the appropriate strategies. So I have mentioned this a while ago. Just pause the video and read them, okay. So that's it for the external environment. So by the way, sir, again, saan ba namin to magagamit? You have your external environment analysis, okay, which includes your general environment as well as your competitive environment. You list down all those factors, okay, all the data that affects your business, your company, okay, in your analysis of the external environment, okay. You list them down, okay, so that you can identify ano yung mga opportunities dun, okay, or ano yung mga threats na meron dun, so that you can come up with the appropriate strategies. So your internal environment analysis refers to your analysis of the environment within the company. Okay, so in analyzing your internal environment, we are actually pinpointing the strengths and the weaknesses of the company. So there are actually two frameworks which we can use in our internal environment analysis. Okay, these are tools to assist us in analyzing our internal environment. One, you have the value chain analysis, and two, you have the resource-based view of the firm. That's what we call the RBV. So the value chain analysis is actually just an analysis of the value chain. Okay. So what then is a value chain? Okay. Your value chain, there are actually two categories. No? You have your primary activities and then your support activities. Okay. So asa man diri ang value chain, sir? Okay. Value chain meaning the chain, okay, in your company which adds value to your product. So your primary activities, this chain directly adds value to your product, meaning from your inbound logistics, so from handling the supplies, okay, the inputs, the raw materials of your product. Okay, actually these are departments, class. In real life, these are actually departments, separate departments. Okay, from your inbound logistics department down to your operations department. No, they your operations activity, this is the part where your product is being transformed from raw materials to your final product, your final output. No, your outbound logistics, the handling of your product, your freight to your customers, the delivery, the physical delivery to your customers, or how is your product, your final product, how is it being delivered to your customers. Okay, you look at those activities. Marketing and sales, of course, this refers to the promotions. Okay, how your company promotes or markets your products. The services, okay, the after sales services, which, for example, if you have return sales and returns policy, sales and return services. Okay, you look into, when you study the value chain in the primary activities, you look into each activity. Okay, you look into the system in each department. Titignan nyo yan kung saan dyan merong strengths, merong weaknesses. Okay, if there are weaknesses, you improve those weaknesses. You find strategies to improve those weaknesses. If there are strengths, you find strategies to exploit those strengths. Okay, that's how you do it in the value chain analysis. For your support activities, these are actually also just departments. Okay, your general administration, your human resource management, technological development, procurement, support activities, because they do not actually directly add value to the product. Hindi naman sila yung nag-handle talaga sa product na binibenta nyo. They are just, kumbaga, nasa back office lang. Okay? For example, your human resource department, hindi naman yan sila yung nagma-manufacture sa product nyo mismo, di ba? Nandun yun sa operations. Ibang department yun. So, again, you have to study the support, the activities within these departments, okay, for you to arrive at your value chain analysis. Okay, so basically, when you study the value chain, when you analyze the value chain, titignan nyo lang yung ano yung system. Okay, what's the system? Ano yung sistema nila sa pag-operate, sa pag-inbound logistics, sa operations, sa outside logistics, sa marketing and sales, sa services, sa general admin, human resource, etc. Titignan nyo yung mga activities nila, and you will try to evaluate and analyze saan yung mga weaknesses and strengths. Again, for you to come up with the appropriate strategies. Kung merong weaknesses, make some strategies to improve the weaknesses. If there are strengths, make some strategies to exploit those strengths. Okay, so going back just a little bit, Your 5 primary activities refers to these activities. Okay, so your inbound logistics, you have your from your receiving of the product, your storing of the product, the distributing of inputs of the product. Okay, operations activities involves all activities associated with transforming input into the final product form. That's your how you manufacture your product from your raw materials to your final product. Okay, your outbound logistics, collecting, storing, and distributing the product or service to buyers. Okay, how you transport it. Okay, your finished products, how you store it. Okay, you have to look into those activities kung saan pwede ma-improve, ano yung pwede ma-strengthen. Okay, marketing and sales refers to the activities associated with purchases of products and services by end users and the inducements used to get them to make purchases. Okay, yung mga promotions nyo, dito mo yan makikita. Ano yung mga style nyo sa pag-promote sa product nyo. Okay, tignan nyo dyan kung saan, what are your strengths. Okay, and again, what are your weaknesses in your marketing and sales division. Okay, services, actions associated with providing service to enhance or maintain the value of the product, such as your ano ba yung mga customer service nyo, or yung mga, like for example, you have a service relating to like mga returns and exchange policies. Okay, you look into those services. Okay, and then again you pinpoint saan dun yung my strengths, and you have and whether you have weaknesses in those areas. Support activities, you have general administration, okay, the general management, the planning, the finance, accounting, legal and government affairs, quality management, information systems activities support the entire value chain and not individual activities. Okay, for example, your strategic management division, kung merong ganun, andun yan sa general administration. Okay, they do not directly add value to the product. Okay, hindi naman sila yung gumagawa sa product, or hindi naman sila yung nagbebenta sa product or nagha-handle, nagta-transport sa product, but somehow they add value to your product by providing strategies to the company. Okay, that's why they are merely support activities. Technological development activities associated with development of new knowledge that is applied to the firm. Your research and development, ito yun, dito yun na department, or dito yun na activity. Human resource management, okay, activities involved in recruiting, hiring, training, development, and compensation. Okay, so you look into this department, into these support activities. Okay, kung saan merong strengths, merong weaknesses, ano bang pwede ma-improve. Okay, so that you can apply the appropriate strategy. Lastly, procurement, the function of purchasing inputs used in the firm's value chain, including raw materials, supplies, and other consumables, as well as assets such as machinery, laboratory equipment, office equipment, and building. Okay, so your resource-based view of the firm, or the RBV, is another tool used to analyze the internal environment of the firm. So the resource-based view, or the RBV, views the firm as a bundle of resources. Okay, and what resources are we talking about? We'll talk about it in the next slide. So for now, just be satisfied that when you talk about the resource-based view of the firm, we are talking about the view that a firm or the company is a bunch of resources. So what resources are we talking about? So the company may have different kinds of resources, whether they be tangible, intangible, or your organizational capabilities. Tangible resources simply means those resources or assets which you can physically see, okay, such as your cash, your physical plant and equipment, your supplies, whatever. Okay, tangible nga eh, diba? So nahahawakan, kaya tangible resources. Intangible resources, on the other hand, as opposed from your tangible resources, are your resources which are cannot be easily physically found. Okay, like for example, your patents, okay, your intellectual properties, okay, also including your human resources, okay, your innovation resources, your reputation resources, okay, reputation. Let's talk about this. Take for example, compare Starbucks and say a local coffee shop. For example, um, Cafe Republic. Okay, compare those two coffee shops. Okay, so you have Starbucks and Cafe Republic. Starbucks sells coffee at a higher price compared to Cafe Republic. But people are still buying, okay, coffee in Starbucks. When to think that they are just the same, they're just coffee, okay? So why do you think people are buying from Starbucks even though they sell coffee at a higher price? There is this thing we call goodwill. Okay, Starbucks has its goodwill. Starbucks has the reputation, okay, resources. It has the reputation that it is a well-known company. It's a well-known global seller of coffee. Okay, so people want to buy even though it's being sold at a higher price, but Starbucks has a goodwill. It is well reputed. So Starbucks has the intangible resource of goodwill compared to other coffee shops. Lastly, organizational capabilities. What are these? These are capabilities. Capabilities of the company in whatever form. Their competencies and skills. Okay, in whatever form. So all these are resources. Okay, so the RBV views the company into resources, okay, whether they are tangible, intangible, or organizational capabilities. So to internally analyze the environment of the firm, of the business, using the resource-based view, okay, so one has to, as strategists, you have to identify, okay, what resources are available to the company, okay, whether they be tangible, intangible, or your organizational competencies, okay. So once you have identified what resources to examine, you have to answer these four important questions. Okay. Is that resource valuable? Okay. Second question, is the resource rare? Meaning, can it be found in other companies, in other firms? Okay. Does many firms possess the same resource? Okay. Third question, is it difficult to imitate? Dali ra ba awaton? Or lisod ba siya awaton, that particular resource? And the fourth question, or the fourth criteria that you should consider, is it difficult to substitute? Okay? Dali ra ba siya maalistan? Dali ra ba siya mapulihan og lain nga butang or lain nga resource? So if you have identified the resource, okay, and then the resource passed all of these criteria, meaning that particular resource is, yes, it's valuable, yes, it's rare, yes, it's difficult to imitate, yes, it's difficult to substitute, then that resource class that you are handling, or you possess, your company possess, brings the company to a competitive advantage. So in short, for a resource, okay, to bring competitive advantage to a company, all these four criteria must be met. Okay, so here are some situations involving the satisfaction of different criteria. So for example, if let's look at this row, for example, if the resource is not valuable, okay, and it is not rare, and it is not difficult to imitate, meaning dali ra awaton. If without substitutes your answer is no, meaning wala ba say substitute? Dili. So meaning there are substitutes, then that resource brings you to a competitive disadvantage. Okay. Second row, if for example that resource is, yes, it's valuable but not rare, it is also not difficult to imitate, dali ra maawat. Wala ba siya substitutes? No, meaning naa siya substitutes. Then you are at that resource brings you to a competitive parity. Okay, third example, if yes, the resource is valuable, yes, it is rare, however, it is not difficult to imitate, dali ra lagi awaton. And also, does it have no substitutes? If your answer is no, meaning naay substitutes, temporarily you are at a competitive disadvantage. Okay. Okay, so again, if it's a yes, yes, no, no, you're at a temporary competitive advantage. Fourth example, at ito talaga yung hanap nyo. Okay. Your resource must be valuable, it must be rare, it must be difficult to imitate, and it must have no substitutes. Okay? Walay lain pwede ikapuli. Then that resource brings the company to a sustainable competitive advantage. Ito talaga yung gusto nyong mangyari. Okay? This is what you're looking for when you do the RBV for each resource that your company has. Okay? That you can identify. Okay, so after your analysis, that you have identified the resources that brings you to a sustainable competitive advantage, or whether or not you found resources na it will put you to a competitive parity or at a disadvantage. Okay, whatever findings that you'll find in your analysis, what then should your next step be? Okay, so let's go back, just the same. Okay, if you exploit your strengths, okay, you exploit your resources, which brings you to a competitive advantage, meaning you take advantage of those resources, you use them all the more, those resources. And if those resources brings you to a disadvantage, okay, you address that weakness. Okay, you address that resource, you address it, you improve on it, okay, or whatever, or ultimately you can remove that resource if it really brings losses to your company. The same goes to your value chain analysis, okay, in examining your internal environment. You exploit your strengths, you exploit the areas or the activities which the company has strengths, and then you address the weaknesses, okay, if there are weaknesses in those activities. There are also other ways to internally analyze the environment of the company. Okay, you can examine, okay, the financial ratios of the company. This will be further discussed in your financial management classes. Okay, or you can resort to the balance scorecard. Okay, so finally, as a last step in your external and internal environment analysis, as part of your strategic planning or strategic analysis, you will make your SWOT matrix. Okay, so after you have gathered all the data about your external environment, about your internal environment, using all the tools available as discussed, you can then identify from the data gathered what are your company's strengths, what are your company's weaknesses, what are the available opportunities, and what are the present threats. Okay, your SWOT matrix is arranged in this manner. Okay, so in this column you put your strengths, you put your weaknesses, in this row you put your opportunities that you have identified, and then your threats. Okay, so how does this go on? So in this cell, okay, you match your strengths with your opportunities, so you will create your strength opportunities strategies. Okay, in this cell you will match your weaknesses with your opportunities, so in this cell you will create your weaknesses, opportunities, strategies. In this cell, you will match your strengths and your weak threats. So you will create the strengths, threats, strategies. And in this cell, you will match your weaknesses and your threats. So then you will create your weaknesses and threats strategies. Okay, so basically that's how you make your SWOT matrix. For more information, for a clear discussion, please read the supplemental reading materials that I will be providing. So that's it for financial analysis. For strategic analysis.